Hello friends, welcome to another episode of the best to the list application tutorial. In the previous video we did settings for React with Redux. So in this video I'm going to cancel that. So I'm going to use React hooks instead, which is a more recommended approach, especially for applications of this size. And also this idea was thanks to a viewer who gave a feedback on the previous video about using React and Redux with React. So let's get started. This is in the next two videos to come. We will be adding these features. We'll be adding these two features on the application. We have the sign in and the sign up feature, and they are all working. So it also has some very nice validation. For example, we have arrow. So when it's valid, you get a tick on it. So, and also we have, when it's also valid, you get the tick. And so when I run this, if the user is present in the database already, I'm going to get an error. For example, this user exists already in the database, so I'm getting an error of user exists already. And also, so here, this is the signing page. So we have the user created. We have signed in the user, and this is action. For that, we have a success action that is dispatched after that. So that's it. Let's go and start putting it in code. So before going there, I need to make sure all my servers are up and running. That is the backend and the front-end server. This is my backend server, and here is my front-end server. So let's go to our code editor. So this is where we ended in our last episode. I'm going to start by creating a context using the React context, a folder called context. In that folder, I'm going to create a file, call it create data context, which is going to manage our data and context, I think. So in this file, I'm going to import React. So here I'm going to export a function. This function also returns two values, which is the context and our provider. So let's do that. Export default. So this function is going to take three parameters, and these three parameters are the values that change whenever an action occurs in the application. So these are like the main data in the application. So our first parameter is the reducer. So these are the things that change whenever a resource is, whenever there is a change in the resource. And also we have actions. Actions is going to be an object with keys of the action creators, and here we're going to have an initial state. So these are the three things that get updated whenever a particular resource is added or updated. So in this function, we're going to create a context, call it context. So after this, I'm going to get the state and the dispatch function from the use reducer. So use reducer, I'm getting the state and the dispatch. We already have our initial state, so reducer and everything. So that's it. And next, we need to make use of his dispatch and state values we have here. So I'm going to look through the actions, but first let's go and modify our actions. In our previous video, these were the two actions we created, so I'm going to modify these actions. This is going to be a function that accepts the dispatch as its parameter, then returns another function which is like our action. This is going to take the user as parameter. So here, given that the request we are making here, the API call is asynchronous, so there might be cases where it will fail, and maybe we want to handle a case where it fails, and also handle the case where there is a loading. Let's say we want it such that when a user clicks here, shows a loading signal there, something like that. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to wrap it with a try and catch first, because given that it's asynchronous, you need to catch the error and return. Now I'm going to return the dispatch. This dispatch is going to this function is going to dispatch an error. It's going to dispatch the error. So the type here is going to dispatch an error action. Type here is sign up user error, and it takes and also a payload of error. This error object has a response object with data. The data here is the error data coming from our backend. Good. So here we have that working. I'm going to paste the code I removed. So after this, let's not return the dispatch method. Let's instead return our res promise. So I'm going to do a dispatch. So when this function gets called for the first time, we initiate a dispatch. We dispatch a loading action. So I'm going to say sign, and it takes no payload for now. It takes no payload. So when this action gets called, we dispatch the loading action, and next we dispatch the data in case it's successful. So I'm going to give it success. So that's how it's going to be like. So let's update that in our reducers. Now reduce. So I'm going to have. So that's it for now. Let's go back to our create context function. It is going to, what we're going to do here now is to look through the actions and pass in the dispatch function to those actions, because this is how the action is going to look like. We have actions. It's going to contain, for example, the sign up action as this. It's going to have a dispatch function as parameter, and also returns a function with user that returns that. So this is how the action is going to be. This actions object, this is what it will contain. The sign up as a key, so it contains the action creators as keys. So what we need to do is to find a way to pass this dispatch function to all the action creators in this actions object. So to do that, we'll loop through the actions object, that is, loop through the keys in the actions object. For that, we're going to use the for in loops. So I'm taking for every action in action, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to say, let me create a variable I want to declare another object, call it bound actions. This is an empty object, so I'm calling it bound actions. I'm going to bind those actions inside this bound actions object. So we will have bound action key. This is the same as bound actions dot sign up. This is for the first iteration. This is what bound action is going to be. It's going to be bound actions dot sign up. So let's go back. We create that to actions key. Now action key means that I'm taking this guy, I'm taking sign up. Action key for the first iteration is going to be sign up. It's going to be just sign up like that. Now I want to pass it the dispatch function like that. But because this is not because actions does not only contain the sign up action, because actions is going to contain other actions, like it's an object that is going to contain actions. So I'm going to change this to, this is the same as actions keys key and that. So that's what this does. So now we've passed the dispatch function to the actions. So we need to return. Now since we've done that, let's now create our provider component. Second provider, a function that takes children as a property in the props. Good. Now that we've done that, we're going to have this returns a JSX create a context dot provider and children. So here I'm going to give this context dot provider has a value property. This value property, this is where this value property makes the data, any data we create, is going to make it available to other components connected to this. So this value property is going to take an object with the state, and I'm going to spread the bound actions or the bound actions like that. This is the same as just calling sign up, sign in, other actions. That's just how it is. Bound actions. So this is all. And also one thing we could move this code here. We could move this code inside this component, and it's still going to be cool. Same thing here. We can still move this code here, which is, it looks good now. So after this, I'm going to return. The main function needs a return value, needs to return a value. So I'm going to return an object. So this is going to be like a helper function. That is, this one is going to help us automate the area context in our application. It is going to help us do the data sharing data passing in this our application. So let's create another file, another context. I'm going to create now the auth context. This is where we're going to wire up the context for our auth, for the authentication. Remember, this function, this file is returning a JSX, so I'm going to give it the .jsx extension. Oh, not this one. Create data. Good. So in this form, we're going to import create data context. We're also going to import our reducer, the auth reducer, and also we're going to import the actions. Good. We need to, so here, this is what we're going to do. We're going to say we're going to export. We're going to destructure out the context, the provider. We're going to export the context and provider from the create data component, create data context. So create. Now this requires a reducer. We already have a reducer. It takes in the actions and an initial state. It's going to take an initial state. So let's provide the initial state. I'm going to remove the initial state in the reducer. Now of reducer, this is the initial state we need in that file. I'm going to paste it here. So back to our, let's export this so we can also use it in the reducers. And our reducer, this is undefined, so we need to import it. So we've imported that from auth context, so everything is now defined. So I think everything's ready for now. Our context is set up, but let's do one final thing, which is to connect it to the app component. So let's go to our app component. Inside our app component, instead of returning the app component like that, we're going to return a function that returns a JSX with the provider. This provider comes from the auth. It's the provider we exported in the auth context not long. So we have here, and we're going to wrap it, the app component as its child. So this is what we did. So the app component, we're making this value. You're making value here, all these values here, available to the app component. So this is where the app component goes. Like what we did here was to pass this app component, make it be able to get the data from the provider. So that's it. This is like configuring our own Redux, so it really looks cool. Now let's do one last thing, which is to create a layout component for our application. So to do that, in our components directory, for now, this is our application. There is an error in actions. We have an error of export. Sign in. Good. Now our application still works, so let's create the layout component. In your components directory, create another directory called layout. Inside the layouts component, inside the layouts directory, I'm going to create a file called layout.jsx. Here I'm going to create our footer. And also, the nav bar is supposed to be part of the layout, so let's move it to the layout file. And also the stars, let's move it there too. So we're going to delete the nav folder. Now inside this layout, the footer, let's create our footer. I'm going to import our start component. So let's create a wrapper for the footer. Inside this we have a width, background. So here we pass that to wrapper. So wrapper has a child of bootstrap class of center. I'm centering the text in this paragraph, and I'm giving it the margin top of 3. So this is going to have copy. So I think we are good to go from here. So we have this. Let's position the footer. Give it the position of absolute. Now let's go to our layout, create the layout component. Here we have, let's also import the start component. Let's also create a wrapper for the layout. And it is going to have a width of 100%, minimum height of 100 view height, and what else, position. So let's have it here. It's going to return, we're going to take the navigation bar. So let's import the nav bar and pass it as a child component to the layout. So this layout also has a prop with children. So it's expecting to receive children here. I'm going to add in the footer after the children. So we've imported the nav bar and the footer. So I think this is all for our layouts. So our footer is set, the layout is set, nav bar is set. Now let's go to our landing. In the app component we had the nav bar separate from the landing. So I'm going to render this nav bar inside the landing component. So let's remove this from here. Inside our landing component, I'm going to wrap this with this. make sure it is imported. So it's now imported. Let's check our application. So everything is working fine. I think this is really good for now. So one last thing, we need to clear all the files we are not using. For example, we are not using store anymore, so I'm going to remove it. I'm going to remove every Redux setup we had. So I'm removing all the Redux setups. Here we don't need this anymore. We don't need this file anymore. Useless. Now we have a context app. No more Redux setup here again. So let's also update. Well, we're going to do that in the next video. So everything is now context React hook. Let's also delete the dependencies, the Redux donk and Logger. Redux, we need to remove that too. Dev tools, we're not using it. React Redux, useless. So this is all. This is all for now. We couldn't find store in. Okay, let's go to our navbar component. I'm using the connect function here, which I'm not supposed to, since there is Redux is no longer connected. So the error is gone. So our application is good. In the next video, we are going to handle sign in and sign up. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you've not done that already, and also don't forget to click the like buttons. So see you in the next video.